Is it true you did a stage version of Reservoir Dogs, Tarantino's movie?
That is true,
Wow.
which I did when I was 18. I directed and played Mr. Pink, and we did it in a nightclub in Killarney, or a discotheque as they were known back then. So yeah, that was like my first sort of real experience of doing something. I had no clue what I was doing, but just very passionate.
But you produced and directed it and started?
Yeah, yeah.
Did you contact Quentin Tarantino at that point?
No,
You didn't tell him.
no, we gave the money to charity, so I think you don't need permission once you do that. And I did tell him that when I auditioned for Inglourious Basterds, and I was like, "Don't worry, we gave the money to charity." He was like, "Good man, I don't want people making money off my shit." It's like, okay.
I know how to find Felix. 2 Ukrainian SF kids and 1 senior Delta. So he's calling the shots. He won't want to move far. Moving risks engagement. Draw a 20-kilometer radius. Discount buildings, open ground. Section every wood larger than 3 acres. Search dead centers of these sections. That's our haystack. Get time code from surveillance satellites and planes that Owen's already on.
I've got the raw data ready to search.
Look for single car-sized heat patterns that are stationary then vanish within 5 minutes.
The Russians have drones up with IR cameras. Deltas are trained to pour water on an engine block to cut the heat signature.
That's our needle.
Welcome to the actor's side. Today you've seen him in so many different things and different kinds of roles. And now in a television series, sort of going back to his roots, earlier days, you did television series and things. This one's The Agency on Paramount Plus, and it is amazing. Amazing cast, production values, edge of your seat stuff. I'm going to talk about the season 1 finale too. I don't want to give it away, but anyway, welcome to the actor's side, Michael Fassbender.
Thank you so much.
This is a great show, I have to tell you.
I'm pretty, I'm very pleased to be part of it. You know, I think it's got an intelligence to it, a confidence to it, in terms of, its pacing. It requires an audience to lean into it a little bit, and do a bit of work, but very rewarding because of it, I think. And, the cast, I think, is stellar. Fantastic
Richard
cast.
Gere, Jeffrey Wright, Jodie Turner-Smith,
And from Water.
John Magaro.
Yeah.
You know who I love too in it? The psychologist, Harriet Sampson Harris,
Absolutely.
who was so good in Licorice Pizza. I kept saying, who is this? She played an agent in that and things. She's one of those great actors that, doesn't get enough credit.
Yeah, and I think, for people in the industry, everyone was very excited that she was on the project, because she's, so experienced, a real, class act. And again, one of those sort of people that comes into work and just delivers every day. Like Alex Jennings as well.
Oh, yeah.
He's only, in it for the first couple of episodes, but again, absolute pro. Yeah, super lucky. We got a great cast.
So you're a big movie star. What is it? Well, you are. You are. But what is it about jumping into a television series that you're going to have to do this character, maybe for a few seasons? I don't know how many, but I know it's already got a second season coming up too. What was it that intrigued you to go in this direction right now with this show?
I think the sort of the climate that we're in at the moment in terms of film is, we were talking about Black Bag before we started this, that sort of film is a rarity. The $40 million, $50 million film, which is kind of, the sort of films that I would have always gone to see in the cinema. There's just not many of them getting made anymore, because people aren't going to the cinema as much anymore.
Yeah.
So really for the adult material and stuff that is challenging, and the sort of stuff that, I like to watch, but also like to be part of, a lot of it's television now.
Yeah.
And that's just kind of the nature of the beast at the moment. So that's where the material is.
Yeah.
And when I came across this series, which was originally The Bureau,
it was a French series
exactly
at one time.
Exactly. And I watched that with Alicia, my wife. We were watching it during lockdown. And I was like, wow, this is really smart, you know. And there's something interesting about having 10 hours to study, you know, a character, different relationships. It's a different arc. Certainly working over a 10-hour arc as well over one season is interesting. You know, how do you sort of deliver a character, present a character over 10 hours as opposed to 2 hours? So there was just a lot of stuff that I found challenging and interesting that you don't find as much of in the film world now.
See, it's harder now with movies.
Definitely.
Especially big studios. They seem to be interested in video games and things like that.
Well, I think it's either going to be 150 million to 200 million budget or up to 12 million.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
That sort of period, I mean, that sort of place in between just doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
It's a rarity to get something made like Black Bag, you know,
Yeah.
or The Killer, you know, these kind of films with these great filmmakers at a certain budget. And that's just sort of the reality of the business.
Yeah, we were talking before we started this about Black Bag, which is Steven Soderbergh, who you worked with on
another spy thing.
Another spy
9
years ago.
Yeah, Haywire.
Yeah,
15 years ago.
and now the agency too. A lot of spy work in your life.
I know. It's weird because both of the jobs sort of came about at the same time. So I got an email off Soderbergh. Just, you know, he was like, hey, what's up, Home Slice? Take a look at this, and sent me the script. And so I read the script and I emailed him back the next day, and I was like, I'm in. And then the agency came about literally, you know, a couple of days later, and just the material on both of them, you know, just too hard to turn down. So I jumped on board with both of them, and yeah, they just happened to be in the spy world, I guess, at the moment. You know, it seems to be a genre that's quite hot at the moment, which was interesting as well with the agency because, you know, I think there's a kind of lot of sort of spy stuff out there at the moment. But what's cool about the agency is you know, it's a slow burn to begin with. You know, it's about the sort of the granular detail. It's also, you know, there are action set pieces there for sure, but you got to kind of earn them in a way. You know, a lot of the times now everything would be packed into the first episode, let's say.
Well, it's not James Bond.
No.
You know, it's more akin to when James Bond started, more akin to like The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, Richard Burton, Ipcress File, Michael Caine, you know, those very smart spy kind of dramas that were a counter to that. And that's what this seems. By the way, didn't you audition to play James Bond at one time?
I mean, I don't think it was ever an audition. I went in to meet them, and that would have been, I'm going to say, well, before Daniel was cast. So I guess that would have been like 2004.
Yeah.
Maybe. So yeah, I mean, I went into the room. I don't think
I always thought you'd be the greatest James Bond.
I think you're right.
Didn't you tell them that? Or?
I should have done. I should have said I would be excellent. Yeah, no, I think Daniel did a phenomenal job.
Oh, he's great.
Yeah.
Well, they're reviving James Bond now. There's still time.
Well, I think I'm a little old now, I would say. I think Aaron Taylor Johnson would be my pick, yeah.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I know his name was floating around there recently, and I thought, well, that's a great pick, I think. Yeah.
What you're doing now is getting great material, you know, with the Butterworths, who are from theater and Broadway and everything else, are the creators and writers. You had Joe Wright directing this. You have George Clooney as one of the producers and Grant Heslov. So this is feature film level stuff. You don't even get this in most feature films now.
Absolutely. And you've also, you know, got 101 David Glasser, you know, super experienced.
Right. And they're doing all the Taylor Sheridan shows.
Exactly. So yeah, you know, it was because of all of those things that, you know, that I decided to go for it and commit to you know, television series that could run, you know, however many seasons, you know, because, you know, all the people involved and that level of talent and commitment, you know, And it's a different challenge, television as well. I really enjoyed it. There's like a lot of respect for people working in that field because it's all about time restriction. You have the luxury of time on a film, whereas with TV, you got to arrive on set, you got to block it fast, figure out what you're doing, and then you move fast.
Know all of your lines and everything.
Well, yeah, hopefully.
It's a different pace for sure.
It's a different pace, yeah. You just got to figure things out quicker.
But what is it as an actor returning to the same character in a sense when you're doing a series and taking it into a different direction? I promised I wouldn't say how this ends in season 1, but the last shot of you there and where you're going is so fascinating and telling you we're in unknown territory here where this is going.
Yeah, I mean, that was the thing as well. The scripts are so well crafted, and I was talking about this yesterday. Each of the characters is there for a reason.
Right.
There's no fat on the bone. It's like, and each of the characters brings a different energy.
Yeah.
So Bosco, Richard Gere is totally different to,
Jeffrey Wright.
Character Henry, to my character, the Martian, Catherine Waterstone, Jodie. And it's sort of, the setup in the first couple of episodes, you have all these different strands and story strands.
Right.
And then everything starts to weave together, in the last episodes. It becomes a very sort of rewarding end to it. And I got to say, the next season, which we're going to start shooting very soon, it just doesn't let up. So, it sort of tightens as you get through the first season. By the time you get into episode 5 and 6, everything starts amping up.
Wow.
And the vice grip starts tightening. Well, by the time you finish sort of episode 10 in the first season, it doesn't let up now into season 2. Things just get tighter. The walls, come in closer and closer. It's very exciting.
It's amazing. That's exciting. It's exciting to see where this character goes because he's definitely a sociopath. You played them before.
Yeah.
But, The Killers, you mentioned The Killer. Now, that Killer was a film that David Fincher directed for Netflix, and it's an incredible movie. There are some similarities, but not
definitely,
not completely, but there are.
There are a lot of crossovers there, between the two, and I did think a lot about that when I was doing it. For sure, both characters are sociopaths.
Yeah.
Different sort of trajectories of their life. I think, Martian is desperately trying to save his soul.
Yeah.
Through his relationship with Samia and his daughter.
Right.
And I think he's trying to salvage that part of him that he's lost for many years now. And the Killer is definitely on a different sort of path. Also, in a state of crisis for sure. But I think for both of their professions, it stands to them well to be a sociopath. Because I think, it means that you can get a good night's sleep and come back sort of ready to go to work again.
Yeah.
But both for very complicated characters and fun to play.
Yeah. And I love the emotional aspects, the personal relationship, obviously, with the Jodie Turner-Smith character, Sammy, is there that you don't always see in these things. And oddly enough, in Black Bag, that's really a story of a marriage, that movie, even set against the world of a spy agency.
Definitely.
You and Kate Blanchett.
It's quite fun because it's sort of like, how do you sort of preserve a marriage? What goes in the black bag and where
and the trust.
Exactly. And honesty,
It was so fun about it.
Definitely. And that's a very, very much like tongue-in-cheek sort of wink to the audience, Black Bag. It's a different kind of genre. We knew we were going to shoot it a certain way, that Stephen was going to sort of, it's sexy, it's shot in a very stylized way.
Yeah.
And again, it was harking back to, films like The Ipcris File and a certain, decade of spy genre. But a lot of fun. Again, David Koepp, fantastic writer, delivered.
It was also harkens back to something like Edward Albee, like Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf.
Yeah.
You're watching, like, inviting everyone to this dinner table for an evening of fun and games. Like George and Martha did. So smart, so sophisticated, and so rare to sit in a cinema right these days and see that kind of level of a movie.
Absolutely. Getting back to what we were saying
Yeah.
at the beginning, you don't get an opportunity to be part of those kind of films or to go and actually see films like that.
Yeah.
There's not many of them for sure. So it was a real treat to be part of it.
Were you always going to be an actor? Did you get the bug when you were young?
No, I just got lucky really. I didn't know what I wanted to do, and I was 17.
Oh.
And it was a past pupil of our school. I went to St. Brendan's College in Killarney, and it was a man called Donny Courtney came back and set up acting workshops and comedy workshops. And I just did a couple of classes, and that was it. I got the bug, and I was like, this is what I'm going to do,
And
much to my parents sort of...
and they weren't into that?
They were worried, about me being able to sort of make a career out of it, for sure. But when they saw I was serious and committed, then they were behind me 100%.
And you did a lot of stage work there, right?
At the beginning, I did.
Yeah.
But I haven't done it in a while. The last thing I did on stage was 2006.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Is it true you did a stage version of Reservoir Dogs, Tarantino's movie?
That is true.
Wow.
Which I did when I was 18. I directed and played Mr. Pink, and we did it in a nightclub in Killarney, or a discotheque as they were known back then. So yeah, that was like my first sort of real experience of doing something. I had no clue what I was doing, but just very passionate.
But you produced and directed it and started?
Yeah.
Did you contact Quentin Tarantino at that point?
No.
You didn't tell him?
No, we gave the money to charity, so I think you don't need permission once you do that. And I did tell him that when I auditioned for Inglourious Basterds. And I was like, don't worry, we gave the money to charity. He was like, good, man, I don't want people making money off my shit. I was like, okay.
I was curious because I knew you famously worked with Tarantino in Inglourious Basterds. One of my favorite movies, by the way, just an incredible film.
Yeah, he's amazing, yeah.
That had to be a lot of fun to do.
Incredible, yeah. Real sort of, pinching myself sort of moments on that, working with him.
Yeah.
Incredible.
I mean, the directors you've gotten to work with in features, from David Fincher to Tarantino to
Ridley
Scott.
Yeah.
Amazing. And all of those.
Real masters, really, super lucky. Learned a lot, got to work with the best, Steve McQueen, Andrea Arnold.
Oh my God.
Just, great people.
Well, Steve McQueen, of course, famously as well, beginning with Hunger and then Shame, for which he won the Volpe Cup.
That's right.
At the Venice Film Festival.
That's right. Yeah.
And then first Oscar nomination with 12 Years a Slave.
That's right.
Yeah. What was that magic that could happen with Steve McQueen on screen for you?
I don't know. He just taught me how to, trust my instincts, and just, it's a trust thing, where you have trust in your director, and then you can go to places that are, pretty dark and ugly and really try to get to the truth of something,
Yeah.
And he just has a talent in bringing that out in actors.
Clearly 12 years went to a very dark place for your character. That
For sure.
Be that easy.
No, it's not nice, but we had a really, tight group of actors, and we all supported each other, and it was actually quite, we had a lot of fun off camera to try and sort of burst the bubble of all that tension,
Is that right?
Yeah. Try to, yeah, definitely.
That's wild.
Yeah.
Yeah. Did you have any idea when you were doing that picture it was going to go on to win Best Picture, get you an Oscar nomination?
You never know. You don't really think of that. You're just trying to do justice to the story, and Solomon Northup and try and do justice to his story, and then the rest sort of will take care of itself.
Of course, you've done a lot of very big scale movies. The X-Men films as Magneto.
Mm-hmm.
I think about 4 of those you did. And then again with Ridley Scott in the Alien Covenant and Prometheus. Was it fun playing androids?
A lot of fun. David is a lot of fun to play, yeah, for sure.
Was he?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And again, just, great sort of writing, a great inspiration that he's sort of, got this thing about Lawrence of Arabia and Peter O'Toole, and just a lot of things to sort of mine into and play with there.
Yeah.
And then working with Ridley, just a joy. He's fantastic. We did 3 films together, the 2 Alien films and The Counselor.
And The Counselor, too. Yeah, another one, He's amazing. I've interviewed him a couple of times. I've never seen anyone more excited about the next film he's going to make.
I know.
I interviewed him on the Gucci, House of Gucci, and I said, what are you doing next? Oh, I'm doing Napoleon. I've got 6 battles. And he's 86 years old.
He's incredible. And to watch him, on set, sitting in his tent, he's got 5 cameras going at once. And, he just lives for it. He's just so passionate about making film, and a joy to work with, and really actor friendly, and a real gentleman.
What was Fincher like? Because I hear he takes a lot of takes, asks for a lot of takes.
He does, but that's because he believes that the whole thing is like a process of distillation. So you distill something until you get it right.
Yeah.
And once you're on board, and everybody's on board, and it's the same for everyone, whether it's, down to a camera move or a performance or what's happening in the background of a shot, I loved it. I found him super generous, and learned a lot,
You took 4 years off, I think it was, to go auto racing, which is a passion of yours, I know. So you just sort of went cold turkey off of the movies and.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of very hard to do both together because you can't get insured.
Oh,
if you're racing, you won't be able to get insured for film or TV or anything. And it was time for me also to take a break. I'd done a lot of work and back to back, and I felt like I needed to take some time, get some perspective. And also, I always wanted to try my hand at racing and give it a go, and I wanted to fully commit to that. And I'll go back to it again, for sure, in a few years.
Le Mans, you did all of these. I'm really impressive. You like a professional.
Well, no, I'm definitely an amateur for sure. But Le Mans is an intense experience, and of course, you're on track with some of the best drivers in the world. And it is one of the crazy sports where, as an amateur, you can be brushing shoulders with these great professionals. And I will go back to Le Mans again for sure. It was one of the most special experiences I've ever had.
Would you like to mix it up and maybe do a movie set in the world of auto racing? Like Brad Pitt's got one coming up.
There's a couple of racing stories that I've been trying to do for a while now. So fingers crossed, we'll see that it comes to fruition.
That'd be exciting.
Yeah.
Well, if F1, if the Brad Pitt movie is a big hit, that's how Hollywood works now.
That's right. No, so, since Drive to Survive, people are like, oh, wow, okay, then now they're interested. For a long time, people were like, well, what is this racing world? But then, of course, when you see Drive to Survive, you realize that the characters are so exceptional. They are like misfits in a way, and sort of like mad geniuses, and very sort of interesting personalities that are in that world.
I think of the other Steve McQueen, the actor that we know, was very much the same.
Yes,
very invested in racing and everything.
Yeah, and it was actually the movie when he made Le Mans.
Le Mans.
I think that was the end of his racing career.
Yeah,
I think that killed his joy of it, that experience.
Yeah.
Whereas Paul Newman continued racing, I think, into his 80s.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And actually came second in Le Mans, Paul Newman.
Which is amazing. Yeah, Le Mans, there's a documentary about the making of Le Mans.
That's right.
Which is
The Man in Le Mans, yeah.
How it just, they sold their soul on that, and it was just crazy.
It's still, for me, the best film that has captured racing.
Yeah. It's authentic. It feels authentic. And I remember seeing it when it actually came out.
Yeah.
Before we go, I've got to pay you a compliment because you've done a lot of intense movies, a lot of dark movies and things, but I love Next Goal Wins.
We were just talking about that on the way here. I mean, I love Taika.
Waititi, and to watch, and it's of course based on a true story, and you played the coach, and It's so fun, and it's so fun to watch. And, I want to see more. Come on.
Yeah, I love doing that, and I loved, working with Taika. He's a brilliant, mind.
Yeah.
He's so like full of energy and ideas. A brilliant, brilliant mind, very sharp, very fast.
Yeah.
I love working on it, and I love comedy. I try and bring comedic moments in kind of all of the performances I do.
Right.
Just because I think, if you can manage to have that, it can be much more poignant when you have a poignant moment. If you can make people laugh, it disarms them, and then they're willing, they're ready to go anywhere from that point,
Totally. Well, I saw it at its premiere at the Toronto Film Festival. And then I kept telling my wife about it. She wasn't in Toronto. I kept telling my wife. So we went and saw it in an actual theater with people that paid. And and I noticed the second time, I said, wow, he's really got comedic chops here.
Oh, that's
It's
sweet.
in a subtle way, but you don't overplay it. But, it really worked for us.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah.
I
So
appreciate that.
want to see more Michael Fassbender, a little lighter stuff. But in the meantime, The Agency on Paramount Plus, you can see the whole first season. Can't wait for the second season. And check out Black Bag. That's in theaters, but also will be at home eventually too. Both of those current things, really good. Thank you for joining us on the actor's side, Michael
Peter,
Fassbender.
thank you so much. Appreciate it.